Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome once again to the WP Builds podcast. You've reached episode number 331, entitled Why Pay Full Price When We Have GPL Clubs? It was published on Thursday the 22nd of June 2023. My name's Nathan Wrigley and I'll be joined in a few moments by David Wormsley so that we can have that chat. But first, a few bits of housekeeping. If you would like to join me and Mark Westgard, we'd be most grateful. We're reviving our WS Form webinar series. We took a bit of a break so that we could both attend WordCamp Europe, but we're back. It's happening at 3 p.m. on the 21st of June. That's a Wednesday. That's 3 p.m. UK time, 10 a.m. Eastern, and 7 a.m. Pacific. We have links for calendar booking systems on the wpbuilds.com homepage. So join us live. You can get your comments straight from Mark, any questions that you've got about WS Form. And we're getting towards the end of the series, so it's getting nice and complicated now. If you want to view the episodes that we've done so far, head to wpbuilds.com, go to the archives menu in the main navigation, and then the demos archive. They're all nestled in there. It really is a really marvellous form plugin solution. We were supposed to have a show with Peach and Eri, the UI UX show, but we've postponed that because Peach is a little bit busy at the moment. It'll probably be happening next week, but I'll keep you updated. But if you've put calendar events in for that this week, it is no longer going to be taking place. Okay, some other things to mention. If you are keen to get away from Twitter, we have our Mastodon install, which I'm keen for people in the WordPress space to sign up for. It's at wpbuilds.social. Yes, that's a URL, wpbuilds.social. Go and sign up there. You never know, you might find it's a decent alternative to Twitter. Also, as always, if you fancy subscribing, wpbuilds.com/subscribe. And if you're in the market for some deals, wpbuilds.com/deals. Go and check out a searchable, filterable list of coupon codes for WordPress products. The WP Builds podcast is brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more by heading to go.me/WP Builds. Once more, go.me/WP Builds. And true sincere thanks to GoDaddy Pro for helping support the WP Builds podcast. Okay, what have we got for you today? Well, it's the 10th episode in our Thinking the Unthinkable series, and today we're tackling the thorny issue of why pay full price when we have GPL clubs. I don't know if you know, but it is possible to go out there and use the services of GPL clubs, and these clubs will give you free access. Well, sometimes you pay, but you pay significantly less to get access to plugins and themes and so on. And because WordPress is built on the GPL, this is completely legitimate. But is this a good idea? Are there some problems that may be attached to it? If you've got any comments or thoughts after listening to the podcast, we'd really appreciate them. Head to wpbuilds.com and let us know your thoughts. I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Hello, welcome to the 10th episode of Thinking the Unthinkable. And today's thoroughly unsavory thought is why pay full price when we have GPL clubs? Nathan, you've no experience of this, have you?
No, this is genuinely the truth. I have absolutely no idea about how these things operate. So I think it's going to be a bit of a Q&A episode because I think you know more about it than I do. I'd also like to point out this is probably the first of our Thinking the Unthinkable episodes where that really does stack up. I think there is an area here where we are genuinely going to get into the bounds of, no, this shouldn't be allowed. We should stop talking about this. So this will be fascinating.
I know the pitchforks are going to be out and they're going to be pointing at me, not you.
Well,
You're
maybe not.
clean.
Maybe not. Maybe I'll ask some ignorant questions. But I guess we should spell this out because there's bound to be a subset of users who have no idea what GPL is, let alone what a GPL club is.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, shall I start with my little bit of history? Because I think
Okay.
we need to put this in perspective, and I can explain that along the way. Because GPL clubs generally are thought of as a bit shady, but you could argue, if we look at our history, that it's an essential consumer rights movement within WordPress. Okay, so if we start at the very beginning, we get WordPress coming in, and it wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for, and this is the GPL General Public License. Because it was a fork of something else that carried that same license, which was B2 stroke cafe log. So without it, there's no WordPress, is there? It's this open source license that grants certain freedoms for, in fact, I'll just quickly go through those. The right to run a program for any purpose, to study the program and change it, to redistribute copies to help others, and to distribute copies of modified versions to others. So any piece of software that covers with that license, which is WordPress, comes with these freedoms. So yeah, so we get there, and then where we get GPL clubs, really, we have to have premium themes and plugins to appear first before we can even have a reason for them. So that happens in about 2007, and then there is a bit of a debate over GPL in 2010 when we have a guy called Chris Pearson, who was the author of the thesis theme, and Matt Mullenweg, obviously the head of WordPress or the head of Automatic, going head to head over derivative works of GPL, because his thesis theme, he was actually putting his own rights on the pro version of that, and that was generally seen as not a good thing. So that was a big victory for things in WordPress staying true to those kind of freedoms. And I think this is the key moment, really. So in 2011, Woo Themes forked Jingo Shop to
Jigo Shop, I think it is.
Jigo Shop,
yeah.
Sorry, I said Jingo. Yeah, to make to make WooCommerce and to sell premium extensions for that as well. Mm-hmm. And then in 2013, Woo Thieves removed the existing lifetime licenses on existing customers, citing some widely disputed business figures. So that was quite a controversy, changing the rules on things. And then we got, in the same year, the first GPL club appearing, called WP Avengers, which was a response to this handling of premium add-ons. But, here's the interesting thing. Here's where it starts to get a bit shady again. The guy behind it was called Captain Woo.
Of course they were. Yeah.
So I just think it's fascinating, isn't it? Because in a way, I don't know if we would have had these GPL clubs selling, for a much lower rate premium plugins if it hadn't been for the first premium plugin to really disappoint its own customers.
Right, that's interesting. So the idea being that the Woo themes irritated their customers because they removed some lifetime deals, presumably then wanted a subscription basis. And because of that, there was a movement to say, well, right, we're now just going to give these things away. We've got copies of them. We're now just going to start distributing them freely. And then some bright spark thought, well, actually, maybe I could turn a profit on these. I could put them onto a website and start to sell my copies of these things for a small fee.
Exactly. And who knows? I don't know. I mean, perhaps there is some information out there. I mean, WP Avengers has disappeared and lots of these have turned up around the same time. But maybe that was the first step, and they've closed down since. So, I mean, I don't know if they were truly doing it as a response to this, whether they just saw there's a way of making money. But it seems, I mean, it was done for that reason. It was done because that's enough is enough. This is, remember, let's get back to our roots. This is all GPL. The earlier plugins, it wasn't until 4 years after WordPress was, forked, that we started to get premium stuff. And then for them, someone had just taken this too far,
Do you know
So,
that? Do you know, just a quick question, and I think this is true, but I could be wrong. If anything builds on top of WordPress, it is automatically, by definition, I'd use the word automatically in its strictest sense of the word there, it automatically, by definition, comes under the GPL. If it in some way leverages WordPress, it itself has to be under the GPL license.
Yeah, the problem is with this, and it's a grey area, and I'm sure we'll get ticked off if we try and get into the legal side of it. I think one interpretation, I mean, running alongside this has been, as we talked about, theme forests used to allow, or I think it was one of their standard policies or something, that the CSS and the design could still hold the rights, but the PHP functioning underneath that had to come under GPL. So they still retained the rights through anybody selling through Theme Forest or the Envato marketplace. And that saw that people who were selling through that weren't allowed to talk at WordCamps. So, because that they were sticking to a strictly legal definition, as best as we know, where Matt Mullenweg's view that it should be in the spirit of how he sees GPL, and that they really shouldn't be keeping back certain stuff because it's an integral part of the system itself. To try and detach it. So I don't think there's any certainty over this. I think everything has to be tested legally, and it hasn't. And I guess the same may apply to GPL clubs. I mean, they're selling a lot of things under the belief, and I'm sure they've grown more confident over the years that they can do it because they haven't been challenged. But I suspect there's a number of plugins that do retain, their rights. Elementor is one that I can particularly think of, who didn't make their pro version initially GPL and then did make it GPL. But I think you would need to be a lawyer to understand the rights that they retain on some of their templates.
That's really interesting, isn't it? So the idea being that these GPL clubs are, at the minute at least anyway, our understanding of the law, which is very poor, and certainly you and I wouldn't want to test it in court, is that all of this is completely legit. You are allowed to go to these GPL club licenses. They are not contravening the law, despite the fact that some people might find it peculiar. And you can download all this stuff for, well, let's say free or modest amounts of money. It looks like a lot of these GPL clubs charge a really significantly smaller amount than you would have to pay if you went to the original distributor. But all of that being said, the GPL itself has never actually been tested in court. So we're really not sure if in the future that whole edifice could come crashing down, but nobody's ever tried it.
I mean, I've certainly heard, again, Elementor in this case, where a lot of their people are appalled to see that GPL clubs have been carrying Elementor, that they pay the full license on it. And I've heard certainly in their Facebook group in the past, I don't know more recently, but where they said, yes, we'll be trying to tackle some of these people who are, as they see it, violating their terms. But I've not seen any action that comes with that, and
you'd imagine the lack of action is maybe because they've realised that they really don't have a leg to stand on. I suppose the closest analogy for me would be, it's a bit like in the music industry where so I'm going back years, because obviously nowadays it's very easy to, send a song everywhere in the world in a heartbeat. But when I was a child, you could buy a CD or a cassette, and it was trivially easy to copy that. You could just copy it and give it to your friend. But the record labels knew that was happening, but they realised they really couldn't do much about it. And there was just this hope that enough people would pay to own the authentic thing and have the best experience and all the packaging and the best sound quality and what have you. Enough of them would do that to keep the whole edifice up and running. Because if everybody copied everything all the time, then the whole system collapses. And the same would be true here. If everybody acquired everything through GPL clubs, there'd be no economic incentive for anything to build for anybody to build anything on top of WordPress, because you can't put food on the table with good wishes.
Yeah, you've just taken me back to a childhood memory. Every
Yes.
Sunday night,
Yes.
you used to go and listen to the radio for
Yes.
the top
40.
20 or top 40, was it? Yeah, and you used to sit there with your tape recorder, trying to start it just after the announcer has stopped speaking.
Yeah, I used to have a little. Sorry, total digression. I used to have this little cassette player, which was separate to the radio, so I had to, and it had a little microphone built into it, which by today's standards would be awful. And I literally used to push the little microphone up to the radio, and when the DJ announced that he was about to play the next song, you'd click the play and record buttons at the same time and try to hold it as still as possible so that there was no noise of creaky plastic or whatever. And then when the song finished, you'd quickly press pause. Yeah, just
Exactly
such a memory.
that.
Yeah,
Well,
and yet we were breaking the law, David.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, mind you, we're breaking the law. I think the law still exists in the UK that every male over the age of 14 is supposed to practice archery on a Sunday.
Yes, I must admit, I've definitely missed a couple of weeks of archery practice. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, total digression. But
Anyway.
here they are, GPL clubs. Go on then. Let's get into the whole thing. Have you any experience with these? Cough?
Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, oh god, what am I saying here? Yeah, I mean, I've used them, and I've even used them on live sites. With clients have known what I'm doing, this kind of thing. So actually, going back a little bit, and I'll explain where I first started using them on live sites. So after we got to the point with Avengers, again, it's back to WooCommerce, but then Automatic bought WooCommerce. And it's interesting for them. So in 2015, they kind of dropped the discounts and the bulk buying of extensions, and for that reason made it suddenly expensive. And actually, for me, it actually stopped me from wanting to do WooCommerce because it became more of an expensive proposition. So in those cases, you could, because interestingly as well, they stuck true to the word that they didn't. So they also bought some extra extensions, things like Automate Woo, which actually they used to try and restrict the use of it, where you needed a license key before the program would work. And when it came to Automatic owning it, that was removed. So with all of WooCommerce's extensions, they've stuck to that agreement there, where they don't hinder you from using GPL, but they did increase their prices. So in that case, one client, I just thought he wanted some extra stuff for a short time. And I said, well, look, this is what it's going to cost you. And, or we could do this, but here's the risks,
Yeah, it's an interesting proposition, e-commerce and GPL, because it feels that if you're in the market for a plugin and you've got a website which in some way has e-commerce, it does feel that, and we'll get onto how these GPL clubs work in a minute, but it does feel as if you're more likely to pay for something without thought, because it props up your business. If something fails to function in your e-commerce store, then your cash register stops ringing and your revenue dries up. And so that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So Automatic were able to make that, but I do wonder what the conversation was that was had back then in terms of, was it just purely being honourable to the GPL, or was there more of a conversation around, okay, look, this is a great business to be in. There's going to be a massive proportion of people who are willing to pay for this. I'm pretty sure it was probably the former in terms of it just being honouring the GPL, but it does feel like e-commerce particularly would be in some way immune to this a little bit more than just, I don't know, a small plugin which does something interesting on your site but isn't crucial to its well-being.
Well, I mean, the dropping of the discount, which was 50%, I mean, it was a massive change in the cost, but in a way, it's pretty much in line with Shopify, which was their nearest competitor. So, so I understand, but in certain circumstances, then that changed the deal, on what you had with your client. Suddenly, it was no longer in control. So there was this kind of like, well, what do we do? Do you go GPL with, use that and take a gamble? Because it's even greater a risk, isn't it? If you're taking money through your website as well to use plugins from a source unknown.
Right. Especially, in terms of security updates or even, who knows, backdoors that have been popped in there. I do remember actually right at the beginning of our podcast run, so probably like episode well under the 20s, we did actually talk about that. We talked about the pricing and about the fact that this 50% discount had been removed. And I remember at the time, well, I wasn't doing e-commerce, so I had to learn it from others, but I do remember at the time there being a lot of angst and annoyance about that. But it doesn't really affect this whole GPL discussion. So, right, back to you. What have been your motivations for using these GPL clubs? Is it just because it's a bit cheaper, or you want to try things out? Is there some bit of you which thinks that if I try it out and I like it, I'll go and pay for it from its original source, if you like?
Yeah, you just covered it with the last point, I think, really. Mostly it's, because I'm doing the YouTube channel and checking things out, sometimes you wanted to see what else is out there and it's behind a paywall, and just to check it out, I wouldn't, I'm not going to pay that, so I'll GPL Club. I think that's initially the reason to try things out. And I've always fairly much distrusted them. My first experience with a GPL Club, I was checking what I downloaded, and definitely there was because the earlier way of getting this kind of software was from those kind of online downloads where they'd null the programs.
Yes,
forums,
and a lot of people and all sorts. Yeah.
And clearly this earlier GPL Club had done that. They'd picked some stuff, and I told them as well, and it did look like they cleaned it up. I don't think you see that now, and that's what the argument against the GPL Club is you can't trust it. You don't know who you're buying it from, which is absolutely right, and that is probably likely to contain lots and lots of dodgy stuff, which definitely was true in the earlier days. But I think now, because they are so they're everywhere now, aren't they? That they can steal from each other, that I think most of the time, if you do download it, it's going to be the actual same program with few modifications.
Yeah, it's interesting. You use the word steal inadvertently there. Sort of steal from each other, but I guess under the auspices of the GPL, you're just taking, what is rightfully yours. Can
I just say why I use that term actually? Because it's actually, and I can't remember which GPL club it's on, but they literally use that word that you're not allowed to go and steal this for your own. You can't use it for your own clubs. You can't pass it on to other people, which is the very premise in which they are operated, in the fact that you can do that.
Oh dear, it's a bit like a criminal saying, here's a load of gold bullion that I stole. Don't you dare steal it from me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating. Okay, so with these GPL clubs, we had a look at one of them before we started this podcast recording. You got to say they're not like, they don't look dodgy, do they? They're quite slick. They look like they've been in business for a while. They've got everything, searchable, filterable, and all that kind of stuff. But the question for me is, where are they getting them? How are they getting their hands on this stuff? So let's pick random plugin. We'll call it plugin A. And plugin A has a free version on the WordPress repo, and it also has a pro version. As far as I'm aware, the only way of getting plugin A's pro version is to sign up, pay your subscription, go to the website, download it. So there it is. I've got a copy of it. How are these websites amassing hundreds, possibly thousands of these plugins? You mentioned in air quotes stealing from each other. I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of that going on, but do you think these are people who've got legitimate accounts with these organizations? They're downloading it and then putting it onto their repository, their GPL club. That's the bit that I don't understand. How is it they've got so many?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know, and I think they're getting them from various sources. I imagine the first one that I ever joined, where I did tell them they got this null stuff in there. I think it's one of these kind of like, I'm revealing my dirty little secret here that I use them, and I'm sure a lot of other people do. And somebody who told me about one club which I joined said that he used them, and they knew the guy behind it, who was always hidden. Another Captain Wu.
Yeah.
But I think from what I understood of that small conversation I had is that they obviously had amassed their own programs. They were somebody who built sites for people, and bought every lifetime deal that was going, so they would have updates for life on that. And then the rest of the time, I guess they were just padding it out with other ones from other GPL clubs and wherever else they could get the stuff from. So
right.
I don't think there's one method. I mean, here's the thing, though. There are different types of these GPL clubs, aren't there? There's some really new ones, which is like Nabuna.com, that does, YouTube advertising with a proper presenter, and it looks totally legit,
Right.
If you see one of those.
Wow.
I mean, they explain it's GPL, this is stuff. You don't get the support with us, but you get, and they do that. And I'm not sure if they do this, but some other ones have their own plugin, which means you can update from their repository like you would with WordPress, the new premium plugins. So you've got that. So
wait, hang on. Let's just dwell on that for a minute. So on some of these GPL club sites, you can download a plugin which essentially is a bit like having the WordPress repo in your but for GPL again in air quotes stolen plugins. And so what you go, so you're in the WordPress admin, you click on the link to their plugin in the menu on the left, and then you're suddenly presented with the things that you can download, so you can update it from within WordPress.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried one of. I mean, I've never put this on a live site, but there was one of those clubs. I mean, next to nothing. I've only joined 3 in my lifetime, so it sounds like I've tried them all. But one of those did have its own plugin, and it was quite slick how it worked. It would do the same. It would give you notifications when your plugins were out of date. So through it, you could update those with the latest version they had. But here is where it goes wrong, is because if you have genuine plugins in it, and I don't know how the other ones work, if that are up to date, it will tell you that you're not up to date and to update with their plugin, which meant rolling back. So it can all go horribly wrong with that. So I did test one of those out, and I thought, yeah, it sounds like a really nice idea, but if they all work in that same way, the ones that you have paid for won't be as so you can end up reverting your paid for plugins just to update your non-paid for plugin.
Yeah, I understand. So the traditional process though with a WordPress plugin, which is a premium plugin, is you go to the website, download it, upload it to your WordPress install, and then typically there's some settings page where you have to enter your license key, and during the period of that license key, it updates the plugin just like any other plugin. So you get an update, you click update, and presumably it does some sort of license check and you're all good to go, and it updates. And when that license expires, it stalls at that point. You might try to update it, but the license says no, and you're stuck on the version that you're on. You can't move forward from there. Presumably that's how this works. If you're on one of these GPL clubs and it doesn't have this automatically updating plugin, you then just have to keep checking back and hope that the GPL club will have found some way, the latest version, and then download it from the GPL club and upload it and wipe out the old version and upload the new version. So it's a much more manual process.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you can get around that easily with something like Main WP, where you can upload the plugin of your choice and send it out to all of your sites in one go, so you can make it less manual. But I was saying about different types of clubs, because there are some other ones as well, which is GPLDL.com as well, which is a sort of I think the basis of that one was more of a membership, where people could effectively come together to distribute as members. You could add in your contribution to this club with your plugin that you bought.
I see. It's a bit like Napster. It's file sharing.
Yeah, it's kind of that sort of way, because, I mean, it's built into our freedoms. I have the right to help out a friend with my program. So I go and buy it and I say, Nathan, would you like this? Which we do occasionally pass them on to try something out, you know? We don't give away the license key. That's the only thing.
Yeah, so you sign up to this service, and then if somebody wants something, you might have it and you donate it to the service, and then everybody can get hold of it. It's fascinating. I'm just looking at the list of things now. Oh my goodness, it just goes on and on and on and on. I mean, it's literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
I think that club's changed. I've never really followed it too much, but I think it's probably changed to be a little bit more like the other ones where someone's in charge and you just pay an amount for it. But it's, yeah, so, but here's the thing. There isn't, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, you raised a really good point there. I wonder how many people listening to this, firstly, are going to be going, well, this all sounds very immoral. I can't abide this. Maybe other people are secretly saying, yeah, I'm a member of several of these as well, but I don't like to talk about it. But also there definitely will be, and I'm even going to say maybe even a majority of people who have, air quotes, lent their plugin to somebody else, their premium plugin to somebody else, because a friend has said, look, I just want to try this out. Can I borrow it and use your license? And I'll bet that happens all the time. And you are in effect servicing the same need. You're doing the same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I see nothing wrong with that. I think where the whole thing gets a little bit knotty, and also for GPL clubs and how much you can trust them, is that not everybody is entered into the spirit of GPL like Automatic have, you know? So as I say, when they've bought other plugins, some of those have blocked the use of the program without the license key. So until you stick that paid for license key in, the program doesn't work. Now, Automatic haven't done that. They've stuck to this sort of spirit where you can share it freely and you don't need that key. So good on them, I think, because it's true to that kind of spirit. But here's the interesting thing. These GPL clubs have to also carry other plugins where you do need those license keys. And in order to make them work, they have to modify the code. Right.
And so I guess that raises questions. As soon as you're running into something where the code has been modified, my spidey sense there is starting to go, hang on a minute, wait. And that really is a bit of a concern for me with all of this, is that I just wouldn't, there's no trust there for me. I'm just thinking, okay, I'm downloading this software from some organization. I don't really know how they've got it, but it's certainly peculiar how they've got it, put it that way. And I don't know if it's been tampered with. I don't know if a backdoor has been added. I don't even know if there's some sort of man-in-the-middle attack on that GPL club such that every download is being distributed with malware, even if the owners of that website don't know anything about it. And of course, that's possible. It might be that almost everything is going to bring problems to you. Caveat emptor, I guess. It's up to you to go and check these things for viruses or suspicious code prior to actually sticking them on your website.
Yeah, I mean, you could take the trouble really to compare. I mean, there's tools out there where you can compare the code with an original code, but of course you have to have that original.
You got it. Yeah. It's sort of self-defeating there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could do. I mean, when I found clearly the first time I used it, and it was just, as most of this has been for me, just trying out tools out there. The first time I saw these obviously nulled, dangerous plugins being sent, it wasn't difficult to find them really, just to sort of kind of run a virus check, on them, and that would pretty much find dodgy code straight away.
Oh, really? And you found some in some of them?
Yeah. That's why I was able to report it. I've got no skills in this kind of thing. If I can find it, you wonder.
That's the stuff that's on the surface, right?
Yes, if I can see it. So I mean, that is always the biggest risk. I think genuinely, it's not in the interests of companies like Nabuna, who will do some advertising, to put any of that stuff in there. And you might guess, I don't know, it would be a guess that they probably do buy their plugins directly from source.
I've just clicked on the Nabuna website, the link that you sent, and it's quite interesting. The thing right at the top is for just $15 per month, and prior to that they've crossed out 89. So they're they're definitely in this, aren't they? They've got all the marketing going on just $89. No, $15 a month. Then they've got all the benefits listed out of being a part of the club and how you can build amazing websites, and then all the different plugins, and so they sell them individually as well. You don't have to join the membership. You can just buy them one at a time for, a handful of dollars. Wow, boy, it's full on, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure the clubs that I've joined, I mean, they've been like, it's just really crazy money, about sort of $30 or something for lifetime. So, I mean, you just think, I'll join that just to download these things. I mean, I know how to put it safely, locally or something like that. So to try them out. And, but it is interesting. I mean, certainly, I ran a Beaver Builders beginners group, and certainly a couple of people have come in from that who have generally bought Beaver Builder from one of these clubs, not knowing that wasn't right.
Well, do you know what? If I was a novice to WordPress, right?
Yeah.
So they've got the word WordPress in there. So the strapline on this Nabuno website, right at the top, is get the ultimate WordPress plugins and themes for web design professionals and business owners. They've actually got an asterisk next to the word WordPress. I don't know where that ends up, but I can't see anything in the footer which might tell me why.
No, it's there in the bottom. It says it's just saying they're not affiliated in any way.
Oh, right. Okay. So anyway, the point is they've obviously, they're thinking about search engine optimization. So if I wanted to get some WordPress themes, there is a chance that I would stumble across this. And there's nothing here to make me think that I'm not buying the real thing, and if I'm new to WordPress, I have no idea what website to go to download a plugin, or indeed anything to do with the cost typically for plugins. So you're saying that you encountered people in your Facebook group who bought plugins from these types of places thinking that this was the place to buy it from.
Yeah.
Huh. Right.
And let me just have, it's interesting actually. That's definitely the case. But it's interesting. I'm pretty sure with most of them, I think I'm just looking at their page there, whether they advertise that they're not modified in any way, that they are. No, they just say that they are. Well, most of them guarantee that they are secure and virus free.
One of the things, it says here, benefits of the membership. It says all our products are scanned and verified by McAfee Secure. This means that all of your plugins are 100% virus-free.
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess if you trust McAfee security scanning, then you're good to go. Anything couldn't get past that. Surely not.
And people do say, I mean, like they try and stand out. They say they're not nulled or cracked versions, but I'd be. You see, I think it depends what you call nulled, really. I don't know. I mean, I can think of one example. That's WP Rocket, who you definitely need to put in a key for that one to work. And I think pretty much everybody puts that in.
Is WP Rocket therefore not GPL?
No, I mean, you can do that. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's up to your own interpretation and spirit of it. So it can still be GPL. And I think it has to be. But what I'm saying is it won't work until you've put your license key in. But the very fact that they are able to pass that on shows that they must have done something to it to be able to make that work. I mean, all they need to do is, I'm sure, is to modify one file. There'll be one file which will go and say, check here that there's a license key and make a callback. And I'm sure all they need to do is to change that to say, don't make a callback and stick in this arbitrary key or something.
Right. I see what you mean. Yeah. Got it. I wonder if plugin developers, not being in any way, shape or form a plugin developer myself, I wonder if there's any metrics which they are able to gather which gives them an indication of how many of the, let's say, pro licenses of plugin A are being used with a license key. So in other words, there's 1 million people using my plugin and 700,000 of them have got the license key installed, but there's these other 300,000 somewhere. So we know that roughly 3 out of 10 licenses are they're not being licensed in that way. They've been found in other ways, shall we say.
I doubt there's any metric they can
No.
get on this kind of
No,
stuff.
I would have thought not as well.
Yeah, and I think it gets really interesting when, I mean, I've no idea because I've never tested it out, but something like Elementor would be a good example, and there'll be other page builders as well, where they have kind of cloud templated. I suppose you don't get access to that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there'll be things which are limited to you. I do remember in the day. Do you remember when Elementor came out? They had their unlimited license was available for this annual subscription, and at some point they changed that, didn't they? They made it only 1,000. Well, only that's still rather a lot, isn't it? But 1,000 installs off one license because they discovered that this one license or a handful of license keys were being used in thousands and thousands and thousands of websites, much more than any individual or company could possibly make use of. So I guess the principle there was this license key has found its way out onto the internet. Our licensing system allows it to be used infinitely. So they reined that in and put this limit of 1,000 on it. And at the time, it caused great uproar. But I have to confess, I always thought, boy, if you've got 1,000 websites, that does seem like you could probably get another license when you get to the 1,001st website. You're obviously doing quite well.
I'm sure it happens. In fact, you reminded me of another one of my dodgy dealings.
Oh no!
Far too much.
Cancelled after this, David.
Yeah, but long before I was doing this professionally, I mean, I've had a Gravity Forms license for about 10 years now, which I've paid for every year. But before that, when I heard about it and the lifetime deals that they initially had with that had expired, I did find somewhere when I was looking at that, because I wanted to try it out, somebody was sharing a license key. It was out there. There was a handful of these lifetime deal license keys being shared around. I tried one of them out. It worked. So you could see Elementor's point. That can simply happen, couldn't it? Gets out there in the public, and everybody can start using it.
But I guess these companies at the beginning, when it's okay. So rewind the clock 10 years, when it was the beginning of all of this. Nobody knew what this model would look like anyway. So there's probably Gravity Forms never had any expectation that there'd be thousands and thousands of people sharing that license. But then also companies like Elementor, I'm guessing they hadn't figured out that same abuse in inverted commas would occur, and they just figure it out as they're growing. But I'm sure that if you're starting a WordPress company now, I'm sure that you'll probably have much more chops about you. You're not going to set up an infinite license for a small fee. I imagine that most companies these days put some kind of limit on things.
Yeah, but if a key did get out, unlike with Gravity Forms, where at that time at least everything was on your own system, with Elementor having a sort of cloud library, if you let a key go out like that, an infinite number of people could use that one license there and access their paid for hosting. For the, it would really cost the company quite a lot of money.
Yeah, it really could.
There is one, I mean, again, revealing more of my dodgy goings on. When I was testing, I was really interested in performance. So I wanted to test out a whole bunch of optimization plugins. And one of them that I found was Fly Impress, which is a very good one of those optimizing plugins, but I got it from a GPL just to try out their pro version of that one, and it really knows how to publicly shame you. It actually on the front, it actually says that you need to put your license key in on the front end of the site when you're logged
really?
out. Yeah. It does say it doesn't have it. It puts up some kind of warning about not having up-to-date key on it, and I thought, well, that's the first time I've ever seen that.
Well, that really is. Yeah, I mean, presumably there's nothing wrong with that. The plugin will still work, it will function, but that is an interesting line of defense, isn't it? Publicly shaming, the person, the purveyor of this website is not beneath, in air quotes, buying from a GPL club. That's interesting. So they're on the attack there. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I have no issue with that one. It's fair enough. It's a premium plugin only, and the author gives away a lot of good free plugins on the repository. So, but it's just an interesting take on how everybody does this. All the individual companies, some decide to limit, which isn't, as I say, this isn't Matt Mullenweg's interpretation, the program, we should be able to share it. I should be able to hand everything over to you without you having to share my license key with you.
Yeah.
From their perspective. But not everybody's doing that. Everybody's trying to protect their business interests in different ways.
Yeah, one of the lines of defense that I've seen is that the premium license has to, in some way, be certified in the purveyor's website. So you have to go in and say, I'm going to be running it on this site. So you copy and paste the URL of the website, and then that authorizes it for that website. And so in that way, it obviates this problem, because obviously whoever's got that license key can't do that. They don't have your username and password for that service, so they can't get in. But I haven't seen that too often. The last time I saw it was quite a while ago, but I know that some people have done it that way.
I mean, I don't know if it's still the case. Elementors get mentioned a lot here, but there's always been a lot of talk with them with GPL and their relationship with it, and because it's such a big, important plugin in WordPress, you can see. But they, when they went GPL, they also restricted, when the license expired, that you could do anything with the premium add-on. So your site wouldn't break, but you just couldn't do any more with the premium widgets.
Right. Okay.
So, interested.
Well, let's sum it up. You've got these in our show notes. You've got the arguments for and against summarized. So should we just go through those before we wrap it up?
Okay, we'll start with the arguments against them.
Yeah.
So dodgy code, that's certainly the one.
That is the one for me. That is the reason I wouldn't want to do it. Just who knows what rubbish could happen. Yeah.
I've much of why I'm kind of against it is the second one, which is developers will go out of business if everybody was doing this.
Right. I mean, anybody listening to this who's a plugin developer is going to be, with a pro version of whatever it is they've got, they're going to be screaming at us, aren't they? Just like, you haven't mentioned this yet. This is a big thing. If you've put hours of blood, sweat and tears into your plugin, it must be incredibly galling to see it on a GPL club, knowing that that's not where you intended it to be.
Yeah, exactly. And I've taken real pride. I mean, a lot of the plugins that I've bought, I've been so happy with them for so many years that it's just not, I wouldn't not want, the money doesn't matter. I want to be part of the club. It's simply that. I want to support the developers. So I think that's how it should be. I put in third here, it encourages some truly bloated sites. But, that's the fact that suddenly you've got all of these premium plugins that you could stick in. If you look at some of the GPL clubs, they are so bloated as you said, they look professional, but it's because they pretty much got every plugin out there to choose from, haven't they?
Right. Yeah. They're like a full-on marketplace. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And the next issue is really that they're never going to be as up to date as if you're buying from from source. When there's a hot fix that needs to come for security, you're going to get it straight away. With these, you're going to wait a day or two or even longer for them to update.
Yeah, and in some cases, especially with some of the bigger plugins, you've got to imagine they have a big target painted on their back. So again, we keep talking about Elementor. Let's say that Elementor has a disastrous security problem. That's going to go round the internet hacker community like wildfire, because there's so many millions of sites that could be compromised. And Elementor release a patch, everybody clicks the button, it gets updated on those websites. But of course it doesn't in this scenario. You have to wait for your GPL club to somehow get hold of that, upload it to the site, you download it. That could be a totally indeterminate amount of time, including it never happens. It may be that plugin never gets updated on that website. Who knows? So you are totally opening yourself up, I think, in that scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've mentioned the fiddling around with the code to make it work when a key is required. And finally, there's just no guarantee you're going to get the updates from them.
Yeah.
I've seen it on lots of them where they, you can guess they are, as I've said, stealing from each other because, often if you go and look at a certain plugin, they're all stuck on an earlier version. None of them have got updated. So, there must somebody, they were relying on one person to have a license for this and they no longer do.
Right. This is interesting as well, because prior to clicking record, you and I had a little look at a couple of
Yeah.
random selected plugins, and they were actually up to date, weren't they? Both of the things that we looked for were bang up to date, and in one case the plugin had been updated fairly recently, and there it was. Well, at least it claimed to be. It was the changelog number matched with the official website, so it would appear at least some of them are keeping up to date, but there's no guarantees. Okay, that's
no.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, I knew because there was a plugin that I paid for, but I didn't want to update it because the only site I had it on was a demo site for this. And so I looked around at the GPLs thinking, and they were all stuck. But now we just looked at it, didn't we, earlier, and now they're all up to date. So, this one was. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So somebody's gone and bought it.
Okay, so the slightly shorter list of the arguments for GPL Club. I'll start off. Well, no, you go on. You wrote them, so you should do it.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it just takes us, it reminds us and plugin authors that WordPress is GPL, and I think, when you listen to, particularly again Elementor, because of the type of audience that they bring in that have come in there that instantly expect to pay for a premium thing, they think people are stealing, and you think, well, maybe not. It's part of the freedoms. It's why WordPress exists. So I think it's good to remind us of that. I think
that was really eloquently put. I like that. That's quite a strong argument, isn't it? I like that.
Yeah. Testing and reviewing software, that's what I've mostly used it for, which has been fascinating.
Yeah, again, if you just... So the curious thing there is there is a high probability, in your case, given your proclivities, that you'll go and test it because, you haven't got enough skin in the game to go and buy it to test it. So you'll test it with a view to buying it, which is interesting.
There used to be a few plugins out there that used to put the pro version on GitHub. Not many of those, but you could get it and still buy it because I was sticking to the fact that really all we're selling is the convenient updates and the support.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And yes, here's another interesting one. Security fixes on software that are no longer part of your regular toolkit. So let's say you decide, which is what a lot of plugins sell themselves, is that you don't need to update. You could, we want you on subscription and you renew every year, but this software won't break immediately. So if that's the premise, here's the problem that happens sometimes is that if the author has a terrible security issue with that earlier version, if they don't go and make that fix available, which some have occasionally when it's been high profile, but if they don't, you are stuck with something which you were sold to, believing that you could keep it running for as long as you decided to, but now it's got a security fix and you've got no way to get out of it. So a GPL might save you in that case.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a plugin. I'm not going to name names, but I have a plugin that I'm still paying a license key for. And it hasn't been updated in over 24 months, so it's 2 years. There's been no hint of an update of any kind, and I there's a bit of me which is questioning what am I paying for here? The plugin does what it does, and there's no features been added, nothing's been taken away, but nor has there been any kind of update process at all, and I can see that. It's quite an interesting argument.
There isn't. Just from that, it's come up a few times recently for me, is that there is no way in the WordPress system. So you download a free plugin from the repository and you just do your general updates. But when there is no update, and even when they've removed it from the repository, you've no inkling that plugin hasn't been updated or been removed from the repository.
Yeah.
And it could have a serious security problem in it, and you would have no idea as a user.
Yeah, that was a bit of a debate in the news recently, the WordPress sort of news recently, wasn't it? That pulling plugins entirely from, in this case, the WordPress repository, isn't always the best option. Let's say that they contravene something and they get pulled. Maybe it'd be better to have the option for it to be updated because, let's say, it's a security fix. you don't really want the plugin author to have to go through the plugin review process, which might take weeks to get it back up when really they've managed to fix the thing that was wrong. You want them to be able to just resurface that fix straight away so that everybody can get that fix. Yeah, that's a bit of an aside, sorry.
No, well, I think we've come to the end of what we've got. What's our final thoughts on this?
Well,
so you're never going to touch them, are you?
No, I'm coming to you with handcuffs, David. I'm going to phone the authorities almost immediately. This podcast is over, and we shall have you banged up in jail before the day is out. Now, I don't know. I find it a bit strange. I've not done it ever, and I can't see myself ever doing it. But, there were some solid arguments in there. And the strongest one is, really, in terms of the law, I guess, you're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely wouldn't recommend them to anybody who didn't know what they were doing and to use them, but that's the thing, isn't it? We're all in one big GPL club, aren't we?
Yeah.
All taking risks.
Yeah.
You take your risk with these people and you think, it's kind of is shady, and most of them do hide away, but so do many of the plugins you download for free from the repository, and how much different is it from, there's lots of people who say, I hate the GPL, but I'm only ever going to buy lifetime deals or something. Effectively, it's still not putting a lot of money in the pockets of developers.
Yeah. We sort of didn't really get too much into the whole developer, the financial side of it all. We maybe should have done more justice to that. But yeah, good episode, interesting. Definitely, I'm sure people will be screaming at us, but if you got any comments, let us know what you think. But that was nice. I will see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Always a pleasure to chat to David Wormsley, in this case about the thorny subject of GPL clubs and how legitimate, moral, and so on they are. If you've got any thoughts, head over to wpbuilds.com, search for episode number 331, and leave us a comment there. We'd most appreciate it. If you fancy boosting the podcast, please go to your podcast player of choice, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and so on, and give us a review. 5 stars or something like that would be most welcome. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by GoDaddy Pro. GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. You can find out more by heading to go.me/WP Builds. And true, sincere thanks to GoDaddy Pro for their ongoing support of the WP Builds podcast. We will be back next Thursday for a podcast episode. Remember, we also do our This Week in WordPress show, wpbuilds.com/live. That's 2 p.m. UK time. Come and join us and leave some comments. And also, just remember that the Pictionary show has been cancelled for this week. It's probably going to be next week. But Wednesday, 3 p.m. UK time, join us for Mark Westgard. That's at the same URL, wpbuilds.com/live, as we go through some of the more complicated features of WS Form. I have managed to find some truly sublimely cheesy music for this week, so I hope you enjoy that. All that remains for me to say is, have a good week, stay safe, bye-bye for now.